Hi everyone. We want to take you back to a discussion Paul and I had not too long ago, probably around the end of May and towards the beginning of June at the campground that we were working at and hosting at this past season. And so this discussion involved a little bit around what our future plans were going to be and where life was going to take us post that campground life. And so one of the things that happened before we even ventured out into van life is that we had discussions on how we would be using some of the funds that were newly available to us. And one of the things we had talked about was the possibility of having some sort of investment property or place that we could eventually kind of call home once we became kind of older, you know, and needed to be a lot closer to amenities and things of that sort. And a lot of it was just us trying to figure out when and where that might all take place and if it would happen at all. So we did experience some things at the campground that, you know, kind of swayed our decision. We were growing a little bit tired and a little bit weary of van life for a lot of different reasons, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later in this video and touch base on a couple of them. But the other aspect is that things were not going as smoothly out on our property as we hoped for. There were some different things that were kind of influencing us and things that were causing us a little bit of frustration and just, I guess you could call it, weariness. The biggest chunk of that was a lot of the contractor woes that we were dealing with. There's certain parts of our build that we required contractors for, whether it be some excavation work and things that that I just don't have the confidence in myself to do, and Paul didn't feel comfortable doing it as well. And so we were getting a lot of runaround from contractors. Nobody was able to kind of give us a set date on when things would be done. And so it was causing some frustration because we had permits pulled with the county that have to be renewed and you have to show progress towards that. And so that was causing us a bit of headache, a bit of sleepless nights, and a bit of stress. Other thing was the weather and woe of the land. And what I mean by that is that when we work on the land, it was always the winter season, which is actually very nice sometimes in the Arizona area, you know, when you're able to escape a lot of the heat that a lot of people feel for quite a bit of the year. But unfortunately what comes when the winter is high winds and also can bring some rain and also severe cold weather. And so that cold weather often made us have to uproot and pick everything up in the van and head to a different direction where it was a little bit warmer. And so that would often, in some cases, delay our build even further by a couple weeks or so. If it was starting to get too hot, you know, we had to take that into consideration as well.
Long drive off our land as well. It's about 30 minutes to the closest paved road. So everything you'd have to pack in, pack out. So there's no garbage pickup, so you're taking all your trash with you. You're packing it in, packing it out. You're taking in your water. You're taking out empty water containers. It was quite a challenge. Not impossible, but it was pretty rough, both on us and on our vehicles as well.
Another aspect of that to touch on really quick is that, you know, we were showering maybe once, twice a week at most, and that was about an hour-and-a-half trip to get to that amenity.
I mean, we did have an outdoor shower, but when it's you know, 20 degrees outside, or if you got high winds, that outdoor shower is just not gonna work. And as you saw in the other videos, it broke down, and it happened on a couple occasions where we'd had to fix, you know, the issue.
Yeah, and we had to also consider our usage of water. We were toting in water. It wasn't like we had an infinite amount. We don't have a well. We don't plan on having a well.
No.
And we don't have our rainwater catchment set up. Outside of the land, outside of van life, the other thing that was a little bit wearisome to us was the job. We started out at the campground.
The camp hosting job.
The camp hosting job. We started off this season with a brand new company, a new concessionaire that took over the contract for the Forest Service, and it wasn't a smooth transition.
This company was a rather large company, and you would think they would have their ducks in a row, and They did not. From no gear, where we had to purchase our own gear, and then just there wasn't even a golf cart. And if you've been a camp host and you're working 8,000 feet and it's what was it, about a mile and a half wide campground, dozens of sites, you need a golf cart to carry gear around on. And that went on for about a month till our manager, who lived locally, who was with a previous company as well, gave us his own personal golf cart to drive around. So that really helped out. That saved the job. But during that fireside chat, I was getting pretty tired of it, and we were ready to. I was ready just to call it quits and move on down here, anyways. So it wasn't what we expected.
We started looking at different avenues because obviously moving down to Arizona in the middle of the summer to live out on the land is not an easy thing to do, no. Especially when we have other things to consider. I think it's one thing if that, say if we both were really working, then there would be certain things we don't have to worry about, like equipment and things of that sort. So there's a lot of different factors, and plus also we have Vinny, a dog, so that's another little entity we have to kind of make sure that he's healthy and that we take care of him as well. So there's a lot of other factors that caused us to kind of also come towards this decision. So what did we do? So during this chat, we decided to pursue kind of a different path of not just leaving the campground, not just going out onto the land, and just putting up quits and saying, I'm done. Yeah. We tried to think it through and make the most logical choice possible. And so we kind of went back to some of those earlier discussions we had even before van life officially fully started and kicked off on the road. And we said, maybe this is the time to pursue that. We knew we wanted to stay in the southeastern part of Arizona. We liked some of the towns and cities in that area that we had already established with over the winter season. And so we made the decision to reach out to a realtor and start pursuing and looking for a home that eventually could become an investment property for us. We used a local realtor, and thank you, his name is Jim Blair. He's an amazing realtor. He did such a great job for us. The home we purchased was sight unseen, so we really had to trust Jim to get it done, and he did. He looked at a couple properties for us and would tell us straight, like, this is not what you want, this is not what you're looking for. And he was able to find something that looked reasonable to us from the pictures. He was able to go through it very thoroughly and then also help us through obviously the typical real estate avenues and things that you have to go through. Eventually, after all was said and done, all the paperwork was signed, and here we are. We purchased a home.
As you can see behind us.
Yeah, our camper didn't magically get larger.
and Miss Penny has been gutted already. She's done. She's now just a regular old ProMaster van again.
Yep. So we purchased this home. It's a 1970s mobile home. Yep. So fairly old, but that is what you find out here a lot in these suburban little pop-up areas out here in southeastern Arizona, is that you had a lot of building and infrastructure back in the 60s, 70s. And so that brings a lot of these older trailers that have just survived the many decades and the weather, and they're still strong. It has good bones. We're pretty excited to be here and have a little bit of stability for a minute while we, get this place completely paid off and then eventually turn it into what our, hopes and desires were, which is to become a passive income source for us. But there are some pros and cons to doing this and going this route. So we're going to list some of those that we think are pros and that we think are cons. The pros that we think are the stability of it. So it's nice to have a stable place, to not have to think about where I'm going to stay that night, to drive through traffic every day, day in and day out, to kind of know what is, next, to have a routine and have a schedule once more.
That's longer than 2 weeks when you're boondocking if you're lucky, you can stay somewhere for 2 weeks.
Or even, a 3-5 month commitment with a job, and maybe not knowing what's going to happen next. That was, we talked about a new concessionaire took over the campground this year that we started, and they got that contract at the end of December last year. And this year they've sold it off. So we would be going through the same exact frustration.
And we did last year as well, because the company that we worked for last year, they were telling us, we're going to try to get this contract. We don't know. And so we didn't know either until January that had gone through. And there was a whole snafu to that whole process as well, trying to get onto the new company. We would have been in the same boat again this season. We would have been scrambling to find another job somewhere. Don't know if we're going to get back to our previous jobs. Don't know where we'd end up.
I think it's nice to just kind of have this stability again, just have a nice calm place to go to. And this place, a pro of that is having it as eventual passive income, and this frees it up so that, we have that something we can lean on, maybe if we're older, maybe if Paul or I can no longer work. The other aspect of it is that there's not a lot of job growth in southeastern Arizona. In fact, one of the facts that I saw not too long ago is that job growth was only at 2% here in this county overall, which is not great compared to the national average. And so that likely means that it's going to be difficult when we do move out to the land, and we are an hour away from everything in each direction. So by having another source of passive income allows us to focus on the homestead and growing that, and it just opens up different avenues for us rather than being stuck in the rat race. This also opens up a place for us to rest when we are building and working on the homestead. That was kind of a struggle. Again, what I mentioned earlier about the weather and everything, and being out on the land sometimes could be very difficult, especially when you're kind of encapsulated in a very tiny space like a van or a 13-foot trailer. And so it's nice that we are in very close proximity of the land. That way that we can easily come back here, we can shower, we can just rest up if we need to.
We can store our gear as well.
That's another plus too, is that we now have space to store gear. Last year, something that was kind of difficult is that we had to live in the van full time while we're working on everything. And the reason because of that is because our travel trailer ended up being a kind of a makeshift tool shed.
And it was winterized as well.
So we couldn't technically really use it for the amenities inside of it other than just having a bed. What is some of the cons of owning an older mobile home like this? Obviously, the first one that I know a lot of people are going to probably make and say is that it's old. It's old, it's going to need fixing. Yeah, we know.
Our home before this, when we had a 6 and bricks house, was even older than this. We had pretty much a GI home was our previous home that we owned. And so, we know. And if something breaks, it's on us. So, but it was the same in our van. And with our camper was 2017. And there was a lot of things that went wrong with it. If you own a camper or an RV, you know what an RV means. It means ruined vacation. Everything breaks down eventually. And if you're out in the middle of nowhere boondocking or in a national forest working, you're going to have to fix that yourself. So that's not a terrible challenge for us to take on.
Yeah, the inside is great. I think the folks who worked on this actually did a pretty decent job on getting this prepared and ready.
Trailer stored into the desert. It's set up in the desert. It's not like us in the Midwest where moisture is constant. Snows are constant. It's dry, and I think that helps out some aspects of this house.
But the outside does need some work. The gutter system's been removed. You can tell there's been some porches and decking that's been ripped off at some point in time.
Gutters? They were never there to begin with.
So there's definitely some work that needs done on this home, which is fine and understandable, and we knew that going into it. And obviously we had everything inspected, so we have full reports on everything that really needs to be brought up.
And it will be a rental, so that will be done anyways for the future tenants to come in. That's one reason why we're here.
Yep. Another con of kind of starting this life out and moving back into a sticks and bricks type of situation is that we're going to get tired of this soon. And we know that. We know, there's a joke out there, and I have itchy feet and a green thumb, which that doesn't make any sense at all because, I like to be stationary and to grow things, and at the same time I love traveling. So I know that here in 3 to 5 years we're going to be itching to get out of here, whether that means to go and just be off grid and away from everybody, or whether it means getting back on the road again. We know that's going to come to fruition, and we're going to be tired, and we're going to want to move on and do something different.
That's the nice thing about van life. If we get tired of this and having passive income, okay, we just like with our reasons for building the straw bale house. If it doesn't work out, well, we just go back to the road, and that's still an avenue while we're still able-bodied.
The other con to all this too is that Paul unfortunately is going back to the rat race. I've always been in it. I've never left it the entirety of van life, but Paul unfortunately is going back to the standard type of job of driving to it every day and working through it. So he's not doing the seasonal work anymore. He is officially full-time and working.
Yeah, I was the true van lifer. I worked the sugar beet harvest, I worked the camp host jobs, I worked the warehouse jobs, and then in the winter season I would hide out in the desert. So yeah, it's coming to an end, but there's a chapter for everything. So we'll just move on to that next page.
I think the important thing we want to mention, even though we've kind of pointed it out in a couple of our points on this video, is that van life is officially done, but that does not, for us, but that does not mean that the desert homestead is done. And I think that's what's going to scare a lot of people when they turn on this video. I wouldn't be surprised if I lose people that don't even watch the video first to get the explanation as to what we're doing.
And go and get out of here.
Yeah, I guess. If you don't, if you just read my title cards and just, don't even bother, I guess. But the desert homestead is still happening. We are still building towards that. Like I mentioned before, we now have the time to slow down and to work on it at our leisure instead of stressing out about the permitting, instead of stressing out from contractors not keeping up to their part. We have the ability to control this now, and it freed up a lot of anxiety, a lot of sleepless nights by having this as a place to kind of fall back on and not have to just constantly be going. So it's such a relief, and even though we are sad that van life is ending because of it was cool to see the country, it was cool to visit our friends and family, but we need some stability for a second, and this is going to give us that, and it's going to work towards some of our future goals.
And it can help us build the homestead the right way instead of just hurry up and wait kind of situation. We can get it done right the first time.
The other thing too is that we can work to make the land successful. And what I mean by that is we have a place to do trial and error here. We have, we can see how much water it's going to take to make a garden grow out in these conditions. We can test out how things are going to grow in these conditions, what needs shade cloth, what doesn't. Those are aspects that you only learn mostly by trial and error, and we have we can do that without wasting precious resources out on the land that we have to haul in ourselves. So this gives us that opportunity to practice being successful out on the land before we get fully set up out there, and kind of also helping our expectations by getting used to this new environment of southeastern Arizona. And frankly, I think the biggest key point, and I think Bob Wells said this, or somebody said this on one of his videos, is that it's not a competition for who can be the most miserable. And I think that rings so true in this situation, because there's a lot of folks out on YouTube that, I think they just push through it and they suffer for viewers. I don't know, but that's not exactly how we want to do it. We want to ensure that we're doing this and we're not completely burnt out by the time that everything's said and done, that we want to just run away from it all.
Yeah, this plan is our long game. So we're looking years, decades down the road, not just for the next season.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so going back to it, Miss Penny is officially decommissioned. Paul, took her apart bolt by bolt, wood by wood.
Some bolts did not want to let go. I think we built some pieces rather too well. Yeah, it was a bit of a fight in some areas.
So Miss Penny has officially been decommissioned. There's no more living outside of her or anything like that. All of the amenity parts have been torn out essentially, and so
everything in the kitchen sink.
yeah. But we also kind of wanted to touch some points about van life as well. And we kind of saw coming down the pipeline this entire year, and towards the end of last year too, that van life is starting to narrow, and we feel like it's starting to come to an end. And I think, you know, there's been a lot of talk in the news recently about a lot of SCOTUS rulings and things of that sort about homelessness. And even though a lot of people in that sense think about maybe the tent towns and the skid rows and stuff like that across the country, it also affects van lifers as well. So people who actually choose that life, like us, it can also affect us, whether it be parking overnight at a Walmart, or, you know, parking at a rest area or a truck stop.
That's getting harder nationwide to do.
We've come across many instances where there's been signs posted for no overnight camping. There's, you know, BLM land is starting to tighten up now as resources are being overused, and so they are starting to shut down areas, or they're starting to cram people into smaller camping areas, as you saw in one of our videos from last year. So it just kind of feels like it's all coming a bit to an end. And
a bit of a bottleneck for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are going to be hurting because of the recent changes in where you can camp and what you can do and what you can't do.
Even on a financial instance, we have been seeing the proposals coming out recently for the LTVAs and other long-term areas for camping and state passes, even for some of our neighboring states, that are going up 50%. So folks who were paying maybe $180 to camp there for a seasonal pass or a yearly pass will now be paying like $300.
That's going to hurt a lot of van lifers and RVers.
Those who are not financially secure, who might be living on a fixed income, who are doing that to survive and also travel and live the best years of their life. It's going to get tough.
And we're just trying to start over again.
Yeah. It's gonna be tough, and we could kind of see that coming down the pipeline, and saw that, you know, this wasn't going to be a sustainable thing. So it was time to think about something else to do. With that said, even though Miss Penny is completely decommissioned and torn apart, I do have plans for Miss Penny, and you will get to see that coming up soon in a new video as I start venturing into an additional source of passive income, hopefully, and also a new hobby. And I'll take you along as you get to see that come to fruition and learn the ups and downs with me on that. Overall, and kind of in conclusion, this is a huge life event. I think anytime you're purchasing a home or doing something that drastically financially, it's a big decision. And I think this is a life event that's going to benefit us greatly in the future. And that's why we wanted to do this, is we are setting ourselves up for success in the future, to help us with our goals once we are in a place where, you know, it's not easy for us to continue to work or to continue to move around. We have this that we can work towards and fall back on for a later date. We hope that you will continue to join us along this crazy life journey. If you've been here with us through van life, the land purchasing, and now this, and there's much more to come. We hope you will continue to join us as we navigate things around here. Also continue our building projects on deck for the land out on the homestead, and start to lay the infrastructure out there to make it a success for us. And eventually, hopefully, fingers crossed, in these next 3 to 5 years, we'll be making our way full-time back out onto the land. But for now, thank you so much for watching, my friends. Take care. We'll see you next time.